Awesome.
So it's
Thank
all
you so
yours.
much. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to share my screen because I do have some slides to share. I'm just going to essentially do a presentation if that's okay. And so everyone can see the screen okay?
Yep.
Are we good? Great. So this is just usually the screen that we start with whenever we do any presentation because we love to get the point across, of course, that aging really does equal living. And we also like to start with this. It's really just a discussion point. So we'd like you to name a movie, a song, or some other work of art that has moved you emotionally in some way, or moved you in a way that has made you emotionally enough or passionately enough to make you want to take action. So a lot of people, anyway, I'll just leave it there. So if you could either put in the chat or actually shout it out, that would be great. You think about it, either
Blowing
documentary.
in the Wind.
What was it?
Blowing in the Wind, the song.
Yes, Blowing in the Wind. Yep, that's a good one. A very good one. Anyone else?
I would say the painting Guernica.
Guernica, Picasso.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Comment from Steve. His list of songs that have moved him is a very long list.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Can you name a couple? Oh, he just said there's a long list. He didn't name
Yeah.
any.
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody got a film, a documentary? So I will say that for me, um, Bowling for Columbine was a good film that got me thinking a lot. It's a Michael Moore film documentary. A lot of people, when we ask this question, will tell us that The Notebook was something that moved them to think a lot about. Let me see, someone wrote something in the chat.
Black Orpheus.
Okay, I'm not, oh, is that the one about the whale? Is it about a whale or whale or what
No,
is it?
this is a retelling of
Uh,
the myth of
Eurydice.
Orpheus and Eurydice.
Yep.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It
Okay.
takes place at Carnival in Brazil and it highlights the life in the favelas.
Oh, that I bet that's really interesting and poignant, I'm sure. Anybody else? Very long. Okay. Well, great. So I'm going to go to the next. So just keep those in mind. Keep that feeling in mind that you got when I asked you the question, and we'll come back to it. So Art Against Ageism is a 501c not for profit. We were founded in 2021. In August of 2021, we use creative and artistic endeavors to combat ageism. So that means essentially that we like to use art. We like to use creative endeavors, anything related to creativity and art to help change people's minds around ageism and age discrimination. So I'm going to talk, so first we're going to talk a little bit about ageism today and power of positive age beliefs. We're going to talk about something called artistic activism, which we touched on. You didn't know that we touched on it already. And then artistic activism that advances positive age beliefs and combats ageism. This photo, by the way, is done by someone named Heidi Wagner. She has a really incredible project called the Passions Project, and or the Passions Movement, and she takes photos. She has done a lot of projects in senior living communities where she's gone in and taken photos of folks doing and acting out their passions. And it's a way to connect people instead of thinking just about age, connecting people around age and the why that they're in many cases, the why they're living in that community has a lot to do with age, and some might think, and instead connects them around their passion. So ageism, I think probably all of you know, ageism is really, it's about how we think around and how we feel and how we act towards others and ourselves based on age. Okay. I don't know what happened to this. Okay. I think it's really important, and given that definition of ageism, I think it's important that we all think about the fact that we're probably all ageist. And I think honestly, I'm 58 years old, that as we get older, I think we have accumulated all of society's feelings about age and being older, that I think even as older, I'm going to make this a subject. I think that we even get ageist as we get older, get ageist about ourselves. I'm often ageist about myself. I think ageist things about my husband, who happens to be 9 years older than me. And I catch myself doing that all the time. But I think the incredible thing about us being ageist is that we all, by the way, we all have the potential to experience ageism. We all have the potential to experience discrimination based on age. And so therefore, I think we all have a dog in that fight, so to speak. We all have a reason to combat it, or to seek to combat it. So this is an example of something that is incredibly ageist. It was an ad created by Postmates, which is, I don't even know if it's around anymore. It's a food delivery service. I think this is from pre-pandemic. This was in the New York City subway. As you can see, it's terribly ageist. 50 apparently is supposed to be basically dead, which is obviously far from the truth. So I think it's a sad, and they did end up, for whatever reason, this somehow got through lots of people and thought it was a really good idea to make this into an ad campaign. So apparently they did take it down too, once they got a lot of backlash for it. So ageism is also harmful and costly. There have been lots of studies. The World Health Organization actually has a whole campaign around it. They've done studies on how it affects people physically, mentally, and with regard to social well-being. There are lots of intersections that happen with ageism, with people of color, with racism, with sexism, and even ableism. So, and in my world, in the area in which we are very active, which is aging services or elder care, the intersection of ageism and ableism is very active, unfortunately. So, as you can see, these are the golden arches. So I just have a question for folks. Do you have, there are something like 12,000 or 11,000, somewhere just under 12,000 McDonald's in this country. So I'd like to ask you, how many of you, just if you could raise your hand, how many of you know where your local McDonald's is? The McDonald's is in your neighborhood, right? Yeah. So yeah, 13,000, I'm sorry, I was out. There's 13,529 McDonald's restaurants. Contrast that with the fact that there are 46,000 assisted living communities and nursing homes in this country. So you combine nursing homes and probably a lot of those retirement communities, assisted living, there are 46,000 of them. And I'll bet you most of you probably don't know where your local nursing home is. Do you know? Do you folks know? You do. Okay, good. But less of you, I feel like, probably raise your hand. You probably all know where your McDonald's is, but less of you know. And this is just something we like to talk about because it really raises awareness of the fact that someone raised their hand. Liz, yes?
Oh, I just wanted to say, yeah, I know where my local nursing home is. I thought you
Okay.
were asking us to use
Good.
the raise hand.
Oh, no. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry about that. So most of the audience, and I think that because this audience today are older folks, and so a lot of our audiences are people who work in senior living, and so those folks are very multi-generational and younger, and less of those people are going to know. I mean, they would have said, because they work in the field, they know, but if they don't work in the field, if you don't work in the field and you're much younger, you're not going to know probably where your local nursing home is. I didn't know where. I moved into DC a year and a half ago from Chevy Chase, and I did not know where my local nursing home was until about, I don't know, 6 months in, because I was walking my dog and I walked by this building and there's very minimal signage. And then I realized, and I looked a little bit closer and I realized it was a nursing home. And by the way, it's sort of gated off. So there's a lot of points to be made around the fact that that these are people who live in these buildings are really walled off from the rest of society. Many of them they're segregated because a lot of it is based on age, and many of these communities are 55 plus communities. We like to point that out as part of our what we like to talk about. So does anybody have any idea what this might refer to? 7.5. So
Length of time spent in a nursing home?
Oh, no. So that's a good guess though. But this is 7.5 years, and it refers to the number of years that you could live longer if you had if you held positive beliefs around aging. It's based on research done by someone named Becca Levy. She's a professor at, I think she's at Princeton. And she wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Breaking the Age Code. And she discovered, based on some research she did on a longevity study. So this longevity study had already existed. It had been done in Ohio. And she looked at how people, I'm sorry, it was a longitudinal study, not a longevity, though I suppose it might be also that, but it was a longitudinal study. And she examined the people who were in it and discovered that people who did hold positive beliefs around aging had lived an average of 7.5 years longer. And so that and in addition to that, you don't just live longer when you hold these beliefs. She did find correlation between faster recovery from an injury or a disability. It helps stave off dementia as well, and other things like heart disease. So Art Against Ageism utilizes something called artistic activism, and that is combining really the idea of activism and the strategy around it, and the art that incites passion and feeling. So it's really a combination of the two. And artistic activism has really been around for many, many years. Many movements have utilized it. In many ways, you probably couldn't think of a movement that has not utilized it. And what does it have? So what does artistic have to do with tackling ageism? We like to use it. When I discovered it, I discovered the concept of artistic activism about 8 years ago when I was teaching a course at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. It was an undergraduate course. I had finished my master's degree there in aging services, and the dean there asked me to teach a course based on a project I had done that had utilized creativity and photography and images to help combat stereotypes around older adults. So I was trying to write the syllabus for it. I had never taught a college level course before, and so I wrote a syllabus, and I discovered artistic activism. And by the way, that's where I met Jordan Evans, who became my co-founder of Art Against Ageism in 2021. He was one of the students in my class. He studied aging services as an undergraduate. He graduated in 2018, I believe, and then in 2021, we combined forces to establish Art Against Ageism. And artistic activism is really the foundation on which we utilize art and creativity to tackle ageism. So there's one example, and one of my favorite examples of artistic activism is the AIDS quilt, or the AIDS memorial quilt. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. It's an incredibly moving exhibit that happened, of course, in the 80s, and I think maybe into the 90s. I believe I do remember seeing it on the mall. And it still lives today online. You can actually go to the website, and I'm sorry, I don't know the website, but you can probably Google it and find it. I think it's called the Names Project also. And if you type in someone's name that you believe has a quilt, or someone you know died of AIDS or HIV, you might be able to find a quilt square in there that's online. And I just think that this is really great example because, some of you may recall that prior to the whole movement, the administration at the time, which I believe was the Reagan administration, was not acknowledging that there was this huge problem and that there was this disease killing so many gay men. And it was, and so the age quilt helped to activate that and helped to get the administration to recognize it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we have done artistically to help raise awareness of ageism. And this is one example. If any of you are heard of Yoko Ono's Peace Tree project? Yes, you have. Thank you. So she has done this all over the world. I think there's one at the Hirshhorn, as a matter of fact, or there's one in the gardens at the Hirshhorn, at least there was one. I was inspired by that to create what we call the Aging is Living tree. And this is really what kicked off Art Against Ageism. This is a photo of it in the lobby at Keswick, the nursing home actually where Jordan works. And they were gracious enough to let us get started on the idea of Art Against Ageism. And so I went out and found this big ficus tree. And we created tags, and on one side of the tag and the other side of the tag that you can see here on the right, the question was, what does getting older mean to you? Or what does being older mean to you? And so we asked people to write their responses to that prompt or question, and then hang it on the tree. And in addition to it, this tree accumulating hundreds of tags, it also created a lot of conversation at the nursing home between visitors and family and residents and staff about ageism, about what aging is like, what about aging it really is like, and how people have experienced it and feel about it. This is something that we have worked on called this is a mural project. So this photo that you're seeing is not something that we have done, but it's an example of it. And I'm sorry, I should have I would like to put the photo in that we actually did do. This is from something called the Inside Out Project. So we actually partnered with the Inside Out Project last year and with a nursing home in Atlanta to create photos just like this of residents, staff, and volunteers and family members at a nursing home at the nursing home in Atlanta. We took photos of them, we sent them off to the Inside Out Project, and they sent them back in giant posters that just look a lot like this. And we wheat pasted these posters on a wall, 300-foot wall that lines a very busy street in Atlanta. So the idea behind that was really to bring, as the name of the project denotes, the inside out, to make people aware of what is in this huge building that they drive by every day or walk by every day, and recognize that it's a senior living community and there are people who live there and people who work there, and they are human just like the rest of us. And so we did this project in September. And again, I wish I had the actual photo of it to show. Maybe I can find it in a minute. But we did this project in September. We also did a very similar project at a nursing home in DC at Forest Hills of DC. So if any of you ever venture into DC, Forest Hills is on Connecticut Avenue. And if you saw photos, giant posters, these were color photos or portraits pasted on the outside of Forest Hills of DC. That was in partnership with us. And they actually got a grant. The Forest Hills folks got a grant from AARP to do that project. These are more examples of from the Inside Out Project. I think they're beautiful examples as they're showing humanity. These people did these photos and posters, these actions around a certain issue. I'm going to stop there with my photo. So, sorry, I'm going to stop. Let me stop sharing. Yeah. So on other things that we do, we actually recently we finished a project with an organization called Mather. Mather actually has 4 senior living communities in the United States. They actually just opened a high-rise one in Tysons. And they also have a research arm of their organization. And they work with people out in the community who are living independently. And we consulted with them to do a project with 300 people 55 and older who lived independently across the United States. And we sent them each art kits. And the kits included everything they needed to have in order to make a story quilt. And so it was a 6-week workshop. There were instructors. They met weekly on Zoom, and the instructors talked about what artistic activism was. They studied activist artists like JR, who created the Inside Out Project, like Yoko Ono, like some other folks who've done really incredible work around raising awareness of issues. And then they talked about, they asked people to create a story quilt based on the prompt of aging. And does somebody have a question? I'm sorry. You raised your hand, Carolyn, a little bit. If you have a question, please.
You're muted, Carolyn.
What's that?
Just telling Carolyn she was muted.
Oh, yeah, anyway, please.
I'm good.
Great. So, I'm forgetting where I left off, forgive me. But I was talking, the project with Mather. So the Mather also did, once the project was completed, before the project started, they did a pre-survey. Once it ended, they did a post-survey, and there was a whole research. There was an IRB entity that did it, and now they're working on the results of it, and they're finding that people felt very positively about doing the work. They felt about creating art, and it helped them learn a lot more about about ageism and artistic activism. I'm trying to think of another project we've been doing. We're also working with other entities across the country to do more mural projects. In fact, we're trying to get one off the ground in Arlington, working with I think you're involved with it, Cheryl, the Arlington County Commission on Aging. Is it a subgroup or something, maybe? Yeah, and Carlos, that is. And so we hope to be doing more murals there. The folks who had the murals done at their homes felt it was really an incredibly positive experience. The people who worked there, the community became much more aware of the fact that they were there. They had people who wanted to come and volunteer as a result, because they didn't know that that was what that was, that there was a nursing home there or assisted living community. And so that was very positive for them. Also, I think that the reason why we founded, one of the reasons why we founded Art Against Ageism is that both Jordan and I consider ourselves artists. I'm kind of a hack artist, but I have always loved art. Art lights up my brain. And I understand, and I certainly agree with the findings that art is an incredible way to get people, it's really a lubricant to get people interested, I think, in a lot of topics. And so that's how we thought Art Against Ageism would be really helpful. Cheryl, you asked, how do we measure the success of our organization's efforts? So one way is through the Mather Project, in which we did that art kit, and they're still working on the actual results of it. Another way is we asked folks, so we took we've gathered this, we are collecting the tags from the Aging is Living tree and recording the responses to find out, just to get to see how people respond to their experiences. But we also hope to ask people to follow up and ask the folks in those locations in that nursing home how it made them feel about ageism, having that present in there, having the tree, the interactive art installation there. Another thing that we do, we have a project that we call the Own Your Age photo booth. And we've taken that last year we took it to a dozen conferences and events across the country and locally. It's really a photo booth that you might see at a wedding or a bar bat mitzvah. And it's people get in front of, we have a backdrop, and it's just one of those, like, sort of a selfie booth that you can run yourself. But what we do is ask people to complete an art card and write their age on it and decorate it any way that they'd like. And then they get in front of the camera and they pose in front of the camera, and they can do a photo, or they can do what's called a GIF or a video. And it's a lot of fun. It gets people really thinking, we think, about the importance of owning your ages. There's a lot of age discrimination in the workplace, and we go to conferences where people are there because of their profession. And so we think, especially in senior living, it's really important. If you're serving and working in a senior living or aging services field, it's really important to own your age, so that you can recognize, and so that others will recognize that aging should not be a barrier to you either working in that field or feeling important or feeling recognized. And so we have a survey. So the people, when they do that booth, they have to put in their email or their phone number. And so we have a follow-up survey in which we ask people about how they feel about owning their ages. So that's another way we measure it as well. And so we do follow up with people in a way. We're not, so and we're actually working on, I mean, since we're very, very small, and we just established a board of directors last year. And we're actually very soon going to have our first strategic planning meeting and building of a strategic plan. Haven't done that before. And we're recognizing that we really need to be more purposeful around the work that we do in terms of measuring it as well. So, and somebody asked, how are we funded? We've had a couple of grants that have funded us, and we've so far been able to live off of those few little grants. We had one grant early on from the Maryland State Arts Council. We did that. We got that grant in conjunction with the nursing home with Keswick to do what's called a dramatic play workshop. excuse me. And we also have a grant from another entity, a unrestricted grant that has been very helpful to us. And we have a company called Source. It's a company that helps older adults find job, connects people with employers who are looking to employ older adults and older adults who are looking for jobs, to connect them. Have you thought about a project or presence at the Arlington County Fair? No, that would be great. I will tell you that we did go last year into the Baltimore County Senior Center. I can't remember what it was called, but it was basically the fair for senior centers, in which I think all of the senior centers had people from all of the senior centers in Baltimore came to this event. I think there were 8,000 people at this event. It was at the fairgrounds, and we had our Own Your Age booth there. And it was so much fun, and it was so busy, and people had a great time getting in front of the booth. And I would love to do that at the Arlington County. I think that would be great to do at the fair, because it would also be multi-generational, right? So that's a great idea. Cheryl, you asked, did you reach out to an organization to make presentations? Do you want them to come? We both. We get people. So we market. We are on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So we that's how we started, really. We started on social media. So because it was the pandemic, I just, established accounts, and I had already gone down all these rabbit holes on Instagram, because Instagram was this incredible place for art and artistic activism. I discovered a lot of really interesting things there, including something called the Center for Artistic Activism. And by the way, they're in a great organization. But anyway, so I just started an account, and I would post things that where I actually created sort of a couple of campaigns there. One of them was a Fixed It campaign. And so I was an editor at one point in my life, and I decided to take ads, those ads that you see that are probably targeted at you, a lot of women, about eliminating the wrinkles and making you look younger and that sort of thing. And I fixed it by I just took an editor's pen and I changed the headlines, or there's also stories. I took stories as well. I took ads, and I took stories that were in my feed, and I changed the headlines from the ageist, like how to look, like there was one about how to look young, how to dress to look younger. And I would change the headline to make that less ageist. In fact, I went through one entire article that had all like 5 things that are making you look old. And the idea behind that really was, well, first of all, you shouldn't be ashamed of looking old or being old. That only those kinds of things only reinforce the idea that being older is some kind of shameful or bad thing, right? And so that was done on social media. And a lot of that helped us, I think, get started. I had already worked in the elder care field for many years, and I had a lot of contacts. So I just reached out to people, and that's another way that we marketed. I reached out to folks, and a lot of people really embraced what we were doing. How many members is already? So we don't have a membership. We're not a membership organization. But we just established a board. We have 7 board members, and we thought about doing a membership thing, and maybe it might make sense for us to raise some money, because we do need to start raising some money. But that's a good question.
Well, no, I wasn't asking about paid memberships. I just wanted to know,
Yeah.
how big is your organization? How many
Oh,
people are involved with it?
yeah. So we have our board, we have Jordan and me, and then we have this sort of extended network of people who are incredibly supportive. I think I mentioned earlier, we have there's this company called Source. The CEO is on our board, but she also has supported us for a long time. She thinks we're great, and she's done a lot of our underwriting of our projects, as a matter of fact. And then we have a lot of people in the aging services community are well aware of us and very supportive. We get requests now to take our Own Your Age booth to their conferences. We're actually going to the conference in Nebraska this year. We're going to the American Society on Aging conference at the end of April. We'll be speaking there. We speak a lot too. That's another way we market. We've just spoken a lot at a lot of different conferences. we're going to a couple of events in May, as a matter of fact. The Columbia, Maryland Commission on Aging is having us do the booth at their event that they're having for Older Americans Month in May. And there's another event too that's happening that we're doing in Baltimore. So Arlington County Foundation is a source of grants for oh, fantastic. I will definitely, one of our board members lives in Arlington. And by the way, I just wanted to say that I'm well aware of the village movement. I think it's fantastic. And I hope to join the one in, I think it's DuPont Circle. I think I live in West End, DC, and I think there was one, but they don't seem to be active. But I believe the DuPont Circle one is pretty active, and so I hope to join them, as a matter of fact. How do you oh, you already asked me, how do I market? And we're funded by generally grants too. Arlington 55 Plus is having a health fair sometime this spring. Oh, fantastic. I will have to look that up. We prefer to do local because, or at least with our booth, our Own Your Age booth, because it's a heavy piece of equipment that it costs a lot of money to ship it. So we prefer to do lots of local events. So that's really good to know. We just were at the Forest Hills of DC, where there was an event for the pro-aging. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the pro-aging folks. Steve Gurney, he does a lot of events.
Meg, you've talked about doing follow-up surveys with the people that have participated in some of your projects. Have you also done any community surveys to see how well things like the Inside Out murals are reaching members of the community at large?
Yeah, but I don't know how to do. That's a good question, but I'm not sure how to do. Like, how do you do a survey to folks in the community, let's say where Forest Hills is, which I think is Friendship Heights, I believe that might be that neighborhood. I don't know how to do I wouldn't know I'm just not sure how to do that survey though, unless if somebody has an idea, I'm certainly open to it because that's a great idea, right? So how do you get that? How do you find those people who live in that neighborhood who have likely seen it? I mean, and who've likely seen the display and ask them what they thought of it or if they interacted with it in any way, because you can interact with it, by the way. There's QR codes on the posters where you can find out who all the people are actually in the posters, as a matter of fact. That's a good question. Does anybody have any suggestions for how I would find that? I would love to hear it.
I have a question here from Cheryl. Since you started Arts Against Ageism, have you seen any improvement in efforts to combat ageism? And if so, how?
Yeah, yes, I would say most definitely. I think so. There have been efforts for a while now to combat ageism. When I actually taught the course in 2018 at UMBC, I had become aware at the time of someone named Ashton Applewhite, who has written a book called This Chair Rocks. If you're interested in ageism, that's an incredible book. And she also has a TED Talk, very much related. I think the TED Talk came before. I don't remember if it came before the book or after the book, but it's a very interesting. It really is enlightening as well. So that and she does not operate in the aging services field. That's just something she wrote. She was a journalist for many years. She lives in New York City and wrote and decided to write about her own experiences. Then it made her much more aware of ageism after that. And then, but in the field of elder care, let's say, ageism is pretty prominent. I mean, I don't know if some of you experience being, ageism in nursing homes, for example. There's a lot of we talk about this too when we present to folks in nursing homes. There's a lot of what we call, I can't remember what the term that we use, but there's a lot of sort of baby talk that happens too. And I think it's all well intentioned, but what happens is, caregivers and others will talk to the residents like they're little children and say things like, "Oh, honey, you look so fabulous today. You look so," or just make, talk like that. And we feel like that is a really sort of a infantilizing, right? That can be infantilizing. Other sort of more serious ways in which ageism affects the field or aging services is, I believe that the institutional, the model of nursing homes that none of us ever want to live in, let's say, the nursing homes that smell bad and are incredibly institutional looking, that original model is a very ageist model, and it's very segregating. And I believe it was really based on putting people away behind four walls so we could just forget about them, to be honest with you. It was ableist as well, right? And even inside of nursing homes, there with among residents, if there are senior living communities where there is assisted living and independent living coexisting in the same building, that's very, very common. And the staff will end up doing separate lunch times and dinner times for the people who are independent living versus the people who are in assisted living, because the staff in many, and not the staff, but the residents in many cases have said, I don't want to eat in the same room with those assisted living people, because the assisted living people are much, as you might imagine, they're in assisted living because they have disabilities, and some are not able to feed themselves perhaps, and they need to be fed, or some need walkers to get there. Well, there is this whole sort of phenomenon of separating those two. And that's, to me, it's both ageist and ableist, right? And the idea that, and I can imagine, I can see why it happens, right? I think that if I was living in independent living, and I mean, I would hope I'm not going to be that way, but if I was living in independent living, I suppose people don't want to see what could be happening to them someday, that they could end up in assisted living. I mean, the reason why a lot of people go to senior living, right, is because they need assistance. And if you're in independent living and then something happens to you, you may be forced to end up in the assisted living part of it. So that is, I'm sorry, I don't know how I got on this tangent. If it's a tangent, forgive me, but that's, so.
Do you make presentations to schools? This person makes the comment that stereotypes start early.
Yes, they do. They start very early. We have not made presentations to a school, and I think that would be a great idea. What we've done is try to make our art, our activism be very intergenerational or multi-generational, so that younger folks are involved in it. So that's one reason why when we do the mural project at Forest Hills, for example, it involved everybody, right? So there are 3 or 4 generations of people who work and live in an assisted living or nursing home community, right? There are very young people, people who are CNAs and direct care professionals, to people who work in dining, to people who are administrators, all multi-generational. So that's one reason why we think it's very important to include them all in in that kind of project. What we haven't done is elementary. We haven't done the elementary or high school part of it. But we did in Atlanta, we had a whole group of folks who were in graduate school, they were studying gerontology. They came to help us with the pasting, actually. So that was really, that was a lot of fun. So that's a very good question, though. I think it would be great to be able to do that, to have that,
Have you ever done an intergenerational Own Your Age photo booth? I would think
so
grandkids and grandparents in the booth together could be a lot of
That's a really
fun.
good, yeah, that's a really great idea. I would say that our booth is intentionally radically inclusive, right? We want everybody to do it, no matter what their age. We try to get everyone to do it. But that's a really great idea, I think. That's really cool. Now we've had, and most of the booths have been at conferences, right? So there are people of multiple generations who are at the conference, but we've had people from the same like company or organization do a whole group photo together with them all holding up the cards with their ages on them. And we also, by the way, give out those stickers for free. The aging equals living, and the sticker looks like the image, that graphic that I had at the beginning of the slideshow. So We give out lots of stickers. We give out information about artistic activism. We give out little cards that tell people how they can be activists in artistic ways and creative ways as well. Are there any advantages to ageism? Reduce fees for, yeah, I would definitely. I mean, yeah, there are definitely reduced fees, like 65 and older at the movies. I would say there are definitely advantages to it. And I've heard people say, oh, I love it when I get, preferential treatment on the train or a bus, and people will get up for me so I can sit down. Some people like that. I suppose some people may not like that, but I think I think there's very limited benefits to ageism, but there are some. Yes. Any other questions?
Meg, I was just going to ask you, maybe you could talk about like what's your goal? I mean, you said you've been in business now for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and your other founder, Jordan, is off doing something else. But is this going to be an ongoing kind of activity? Will you be partnering with other groups? What is the future of Arts Against Ageism, as
Good
you
question.
develop?
So I think, first of all, this is it's part-time for both Jordan and me, this work. It has always been part-time, because I have other, jobs. I do consulting actually in the field of aging services. And so I started this as a part-time gig, and Jordan has the same. Right now, he's overwhelmed with his full-time job, but I'm lucky enough that I have other part-time jobs, and this is one of my part-time jobs. So, and it's largely unpaid for me at the moment, but we would like to, so our goal, like I said, we're having a strategic planning meeting actually this weekend. And I would like to, what we need to do is get our ducks in order so that we can become more sustainable through funding and continue our work, and continue our mission, which is to use art and creativity to tackle ageism, and advance positive age beliefs. So we want to just continue our mission. We need to do it in a very intentional way so that we can be much more efficient about it and less. And but there are lots of folks and entities who reach out to us and say, we want to do this, we want to do this, and we think about, and we'd love to, but we can't. We have to sort of keep our focus and recognize that we can't go off and chase every squirrel, right? So, and that's one of the things I think a lot of nonprofits have to do and have to figure out, right? So I think it's right now, it's managing us as a not-for-profit, becoming sustainable, and doing the work that we want to do to continue our mission, really.
Well, I
Are there-
guess.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
No, I was just going to say, because there's actually one of the people that I also had on my show a while ago was Tracy Gendron, who's a gerontologist at the Department of Gerontology at Virginia Commonwealth University, and you probably know her. And
Yeah.
then more recently, I interviewed Patricia D'Antonio, who her organization is redefining aging. And I was just wondering, since you've got a lot of other kind of activities going on yourself, that sometimes it's good to kind of spread the wealth a little bit. And Patricia is actually associated with the Gerontological Society as well. But there is a whole organization called Center for Reframing Aging.
Yep, I'm aware of them. They're part of the National Center on Aging, maybe, or something.
Yes, yes. So happy to share any particular resources for you as well, because not necessarily bigger is better, but sometimes, working together with you've obviously developed a certain niche in connection with arts, but if you know Patricia, be happy to make that connection.
Thank you. I don't know. And the names sound somewhat familiar, but no, that would be fabulous. That would be great. I would love that. So someone said, do you have a slogan, symbol, or art? Yeah, so our logo is actually on our website. You should go to our website, artagainstageism.org. And we also are on all the major social media sites. We're on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. We are not on TikTok. And I mean, and as for long as TikTok might be around, I don't know, who knows how long. Let's see, somebody asked, could you participate in the combined federal campaign? I guess we could probably participate since we're a 501c3. I presume we could. It takes some paperwork in the beginning, but it's a good source. That I didn't, that's a really great idea. I'm glad somebody brought that up because I'm going to bring that up this weekend. I don't know why I had not thought about that before. We just got our official 501c3 just over a year ago. So, we probably haven't taken advantage of that as much as we should or could, right? Younger people have also experienced experience with victim. Yes, that's absolutely true. I think there's worth in discussing it. That is something that we are very cognizant of. Jordan, my co-founder, is 28 years old. I am 58. We are 30 years apart. We are very different in some ways, and an odd couple. He happens to be African American. I'm obviously white. We have different experiences, but we also have a lot of commonalities. He is very much interested in talking about the having experienced ageism as a younger person. I think that's very prevalent. I do hear that when we do our Own Your Age booth. I've had younger folks say, I'm afraid to own my age because I don't want someone to think that I'm not qualified, that because I'm so young, I won't be qualified for a certain job or promotion. And so I think that's very interesting. I think that's worth discussing, absolutely.
And Meg, just so you know, we're about 10 minutes to 11.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. And I'm hoping, actually, if you don't mind, I would love to find a video that I would love to show you from we're also on YouTube, I forgot to say. So, from our YouTube channel, it is something from one of the workshops that we did. I'm going to look it up right now, if that's okay.
Yep.
This is a workshop we did with Keswick. It was a dramatic play workshop in which a dramatic play artist came in and did a present, and she did like a 5-week long workshop with about 5 women, older women who live in the community where Keswick is. And the prompt was around aging, and there was a culminating event in which a presentation, and some did it on Zoom because it was in 2022, I think, and some did it on Zoom, some did it in person at Keswick. They either wrote a poem or did spoken word or performed poetry. And I'm going to show you the the highlights reel from that culminating event here in a second, if I can. Okay, I'm going to pull it up.
But I was asked to
Oops,
respond to the question.
Sorry, let me share. Is it? Can you see this, folks?
Yep.
I hope you can hear it.
But I was asked to respond to the question, what is aging? It was difficult for me to answer. As a matter of fact, recently, I've been grappling with that question.
Aging is our own time capsule of memories, thoughts, feelings, and images. Sometimes when I look in the mirror today, I get a little bit sad or depressed at what I see, realizing that things are not the same and things have changed. But in the end, I have learned to know that we're all growing and changing, and that's okay.
I don't think I'd give my younger self any advice. Instead, I just walk beside her, talk to her more kindly. I'd remind her she's worth it. There is a beauty to be found in spots.
I don't think I'll be reading War and Peace again or any book over 1,000 pages. I will be reading Nikki Giovanni poems and Agatha Christie stories.
Challenge yourself during the aging process and develop love, joy, and self-control. Develop patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and faithfulness. Aging is a positive process. Aging is a natural process for all. My bones are stiff and aching, and my feet won't climb the stair. I'll only ask one favor. Don't bring me no rocking chair. And my feet are walking, stumbling. Don't study and get it wrong. 'Cause tired don't mean lazy. Every goodbye ain't gone. Oh, I am Asian, but I am not old. So, what is aging? Ah, that is the question.
So that was them celebrating at the room where they were. So that was anyway, at the end of it when they're all dancing, they were just celebrating the end of it. So I thought that was lovely. Look, I'm proud of my age. Look how long I've lasted. That's awesome, Steve. And I think I owned my age. I would like to know, I'm hoping other folks will own their age too. Steve, how old are you? Well, type it. How about everybody type their ages in the chat? I'm going to type mine. 78 in a week or so, 82, 74, 67, 77. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, and we're just about out of time. Meg, thank you so much for your presentation. This was fabulous and very enlightening. I think we sometimes don't pay too much attention to ageism because it's so much a part of our lives that we tend to forget of what's going on. So, and best wishes for your organization. Thank you for what
Thank you.
do
Thank
and
you.
what
Can I ask a
do.
question? Would
Sure.
it be possible for me to get the chat, what was written in the chat? Because there were some really good suggestions in there and I wasn't able to take the notes. So if you think I can get that, that would be great.
Gary, what
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
Gary's the techie here, the audio engineer, so he can will help provide that information. So if we don't have any other questions, I guess we will close out. And again, thank you, Meg, for your
you.
presentation. And next week, we're going to learn about acupuncture. That's an type of procedure that lots of people have heard about, but maybe don't know very much about. And our guest is going to be Damon Iacovelli, who is an acupuncturist and herbalist at Oliva Acupuncture. So you'll learn about the therapy and how it affects the body and health conditions and what the therapy session experience is like. So be sure and tune in. All new information. So 10
Thank you.
o'clock next week. And meanwhile, stay warm and safe. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.